Hey there, little buddies, and welcome to yet another edition of the Boob Tube Buddies podcast, in which we'll be discussing American Gods, Episode 6, entitled A Murder of Gods. I am Mothman, and I'm joined by the fire-forged sword to my rolling head, Devin. What's going on, man?
Well, you always rock that.
I try. I have to make up for my tweets that are terrible.
Well, my tweet rhymes this week. So
Nice! I can never pull off a rhyming tweet. Yeah.
Whether or not it works or not, we shall see.
So, social media, we talk about it every week. We're actually getting a little bit of engagement on YouTube, especially the Fargo series. YouTube loves Fargo, it seems. But we're on Reddit, we're on Twitter, we're on Facebook. Hit us up on any of those. We love fan interaction. We actually have one of our OG fans, Bricky Shy, doing a regular segment on all 18 episodes of Twin Peaks, or at least the majority of them, and in case something falls through. But we do love making our fans part of the conversation. It's what we enjoy most, to be honest. So please be a part of that dialogue. Hit us up with any of your theories, commentaries, and whatnot. Additionally, if you'd like to support us, we have ads in the middle of the show, which you can do Audible, Blue Apron, and those things. But more than anything, just tell people about us. If you do want to support us monetarily, because we're at 200 plus episodes and have never made a profit, it's literally just operating costs. We have a Patreon. Even just $1 a month, goes a long way. So enough of that. Let's get into the good stuff. And the good stuff is obviously talking about the news. What do you say, Devin?
Yes. Damn fine podcasting.
Damn fine podcasting. So I'm going to kick us off. It's been long rumored, and it finally came to fruition. Apple announced the sought-after and rumored HomePod, which is basically a $349 answer to Amazon's Alexa, but it's going to have a lot better audio. Like, it's a 360 speaker with tons of microphones and tweeters and stuff that's supposed to sound really good. People haven't been able to demo it yet, but the other cool thing about it is it doubles as like a wireless speaker sound system, kind of like Sonos. So anyway, kind of a cool concept, not just to do a speaker, but to kind of double as Sonos. They also updated Siri so that it's a little more responsive, but I honestly don't even want to talk about that. I want to talk about the hidden gem in WWDC, which is the Apple Pencil case. Have you seen this?
No, I looked through it all and I didn't see that at all.
No, it wasn't actually part of the keynote, but God, it is a $29 leather case for your $99 Apple Pencil. So, why wouldn't you want to protect your Apple Pencil with a 30% upcharge? And why also wouldn't you want it to be something kind of impractical? Like, can you imagine just putting any of your pens or pencils in a leather case?
I feel like the nerds in the 70s are going to pick that up like you wouldn't even believe.
Yeah.
Could it fit in your shirt pocket?
Right? I guess it is. If you drop it and you don't want it to break, I guess it's kind of cool. At the same time, they introduced this new, this is actually kind of cool. It's basically a leather sleeve to put your iPad Pro in, and in the sleeve is a pencil holder, which makes more sense because then they're together. Meanwhile, the pencil in its own case is just as easy to lose.
Yeah.
Anyway.
I would just assume Apple care for that, right? Apple Care for your pencil would be only $5 or something.
Yeah. The $5 for Apple Care, $30 for the case. Anyway,
what is your take on the text turning off during driving? That's gotten a lot of chatting. I'm actually was blown away to see my Facebook. A lot of people were actually saying they would drop their iPhone and go back to Android if it was not a disableable feature. And
it is a disableable feature.
It is? Okay. Well, they say
it in the keynote where...
Oh, they do?
Yeah. If you go to use it, you wake up your phone, it says, hey, you're driving, and you just say, I'm a passenger.
Like the Pokemon Go thing.
Like Pokemon Go, like Waze, the app. If you want to drop iPhone because they're trying to keep teens from killing themselves, you go right ahead, you fucking idiot. Like, Jesus. They're not going to keep it from being completely used because, obviously, if you're a passenger, it's still going to say.
Right.
But they also told you, I think people just don't read the news. They also added where you can actually basically just like real Do Not Disturb, prioritize certain contacts to where they come through no matter what. So if you have a work call or this, you can let any of that stuff come through. Meanwhile, Twitter, Facebook, all the stuff that, you don't really have a way to meaningfully respond to in a car, those are going to go away. So from what I saw in the keynote, it's a pretty well thought out feature, but you know how the internet is. It becomes sound bites and just becomes iPhone disabled during driving, which is ridiculous. Noted another cool feature is, which we could talk all day about WWDC. I was just trying to make a joke, is you can hit the sleep wake button on your phone 5 times and it'll call the police.
Oh.
So like a way to emergency dial, like imagine, I don't know, you're a hostage, it's in your pocket, you can't pull it out. You just do that 5 times and it's already calling, the screen's still asleep. Or you're just like, I don't know, just in an emergency and I don't know, your screen's broken and doesn't respond, like it still does a call. So anyway, lots of cool features. You got a story though too. I think yours is pretty interesting.
Yeah, it actually fits in well with the opening of the episode. So a couple days ago, a 31-year-old man died from getting an infection. He got a Jesus is my life tattoo on his leg, and I don't know if you've got any ink. I've got a few myself.
I have a Watchman tattoo on my left wrist.
You have to keep it clean, and you can't let it heal. You have literally millions of micro cuts on your tattoo site. He decided to go swimming in the Gulf of Mexico, and because of that, contracted a horrible infection and ended up dying 5 days after the tattoo. The thing that was interesting is that it ties in with the episode because literally they go swimming and the guy had the Jesus tattoo.
Yeah.
And there's also a little bit of irony in saying Jesus will save me on my leg.
Yeah.
And
Jesus will save you a spot in heaven because you're coming pretty soon, buddy.
Yeah. So if you get a tattoo, clean.
Yes.
Clean.
If you're a family member of his listening, we don't mean to offend, but hey, clean your tattoo when you get it and don't go swimming really anywhere. I mean, even a swimming pool, there's probably piss in it, right?
Yeah.
And I imagine the chlorine doesn't feel good on an open wound.
I'm trying to remember if you're not even supposed to. I mean, you can shower, but you're not supposed to even soak.
But showering, you're supposed to have it covered up to where nothing can get in.
Yeah, with saran wrap.
Yeah, so to think about swimming where you're like paddling through. Anyway, bad idea. Don't do it. All right, I think we got time for one more, and then we'll get into the tweet in the middle of it. But there is a new Twitter account that I recommend all of you check out, which is @RealPressSecBot. Sec is in secretary, abbreviated SEC. RealPressSecBot. And it is a bot that is doing what is clearly impossible for Donald Trump, which is making him seem slightly presidential. And so what it does is it takes each of his tweets. And when I first read it, I was really optimistic because I thought, man, this must be a really fucking smart bot. I thought it was going to take his bullshit gibberish and try to turn it into something presidential sounding. But obviously not even a person can do that, much less Sean Spicer, much less a bot. So instead what they've done is it basically retweets out that tweet as an image. And the image is on official White House stationery, but just with his 140 characters, his confetti, his dots, and his ridiculousness. So it's a pretty funny way to enjoy our country falling apart.
I'm sure that bot has been very active these last 16 hours too, because holy shit, the meltdown. It's been bad.
I know. I cannot wait to see what this bot has to say come Thursday during the live stream of Comey's Senate hearing.
I'm streaming it while I work all day.
Right? Right?
I only do that for like the WDC and then like the E3 stuff.
Yeah, which is E3 is this week. This is the best week. WWDC, E3, Comey hearing. It's going to be fun.
I'm not going to get any work done.
All right, so we're officially going to... I know, right? We are officially going to get into spoiler territory because we are going into our second segment, Summon It Up in a Tweet.
Oh yeah, we're summon it up, so summon it up. Summon it up, oh yeah, we're summon it up. Oh yeah, we're summon it up, so summon it up. Summon it up and up.
Tweet.
Alrighty, so why don't you start us off?
Alrighty. I actually went way under my limit for once.
Oh my.
So, Shadow remains clueless. What does dead wife see but light? What else is there except middle America is trite? Damn it. I can't speak. The rhyming screwed me up.
I know, it's like a tongue twister. Either way, I really appreciate it. And I thought you did a good job, and you definitely get an A for effort because I can never rhyme. All right. Mine has... So to make this work, and I still don't really make a point, I had to not do spaces after periods, I had to do like the word into as the letter N, number 2. But anyway, you ready for this?
Mm-hmm.
Like Mexican Coke, Mexican Jesus is better. A dead girl, a leprechaun, and a god fucker walk into a bar. The god of Middle America forges a blade.
Yes.
So, yeah,
Showing me up all the time.
I don't know about that. It was basically 3 separate jokes, but none of them had a punchline. So a dead girl, a leprechaun, and a god fucker walk into a bar, but like, where's the joke?
Yeah.
I don't know. Anyway, that was Summon It Up in a Tweet.
Summon it up in a tweet. Summon it up in a tweet. Summon it up in a tweet.
All right, before we actually get too much into the specifics of the episode, I'm just going to say 3rd episode in a row I really liked. It's almost like, why did the season start at episode 4?
I was gonna say we're gonna differ this one. I thought this episode was probably the least strong, but it's just maybe because I'm kind of tired of that narrative. I mean, we could break it down step by step, but
Well, so which narrative are you tired of?
the Middle America crap, and I'm just kind of that whole. There's such a strength and limitless ability with this show to really kind of do some new stuff, and I get that you got to kind of follow the novel a little bit here, but they went the extreme part. I'm just kind of tired of the Middle American Aryan thing. It's been done. I get that might be a represented route to kind of convey the god that they were conveying, but I just feel like it took Ian McShane's character down a simple route where he's a very complex character. And then the only thing that I ended up enjoying too much was kind of the road trip between the 3. So the leprechaun, dead wife, and I don't know what we're calling cab driver. But beyond those few little scenes, I just kind of felt forced, like I knew every single beat before the beat was going to happen. And maybe it just ended up being timed in such a way that...
But do you think you knew the beat? I don't know. They haven't touched... I mean, what other parts of the show have they even touched on Middle America? And how do you have a show about worshiping gods? Yeah, so it's something you see in media, but like ultimately you have a show of the gods and people are worshiping media and social media. Like, how do you not have a show that takes place in America and not at least touch upon the fact that like a lot of the country worships guns?
Well, that's an interesting thing, is because you have to make direct comparisons with media and the gun stuff. So you have to sit there and say, if we're not focusing on this and not making this such a hotbed issue, if we were not worshiping media, would we be worshiping that gun just as much? Because I'm kind of the camp that if we stop focusing on some of these things and worshiping and turning it into like this kind of clusterfuck of sharing of information for things that are unpleasant, would they gain as much traction? Like, for example, like, Westboro Baptist Church, that horrid picket. They have gone away pretty significantly from the news, and you don't see it as much anymore. But there was a time period for like 2 years where it's kind of like the Trump effect. They were shoving cameras in their faces and giving them a hotbed to speak on. You know what I mean? So from sitting there and giving them the ability to speak, then there's this shock and awe, and it just kind of gives power to them. And so the god in this was very much the god of fire and power and stuff like that.
Yeah, it's Vulcan, the god of fire and volcano forging, I thought they did a good job of tying like the last scene before he dies. They have the message of, basically, we're now officially in spoiler territory, everyone. Now,
yep.
What he reveals, Ian McShane Wednesday asked, like, wait, did you tell him? He goes, yeah, I told him. But otherwise, it seems like he's an old god. He would traditionally be on Wednesday's side, right? Wednesday is Odin. This is Vulcan, a Greek god. It's not a modern god like media, not a modern god like Mr. World that you're not sure about. But he's like, no, you don't understand. They gave me new life. Like, they gave me the gun. And I don't know. I thought they did a good job with his dialogue because guns are such a mixed bag in America. Like, I grew up with family in Mississippi. I grew up hunting. Like, in general, I don't have this issue with guns as a whole. I do have an issue with like the fetishization and the fact that people need to have 50 and they need to have 50 round magazines and everything else. But they kind of draw that parallel of like, you know, born of the fires of a revolution, like guns were important militia to making this country. So it's part of our ancestral memory. But then he also ties the corollary that like I get blood sacrifices every time a theater shot up. So it kind of runs the gamut of where they're at to where they are now. And I don't know if they're going to give any more context, but it also ties into, you know, the people with Thy Kingdom Come and rosaries around their hands that were shooting Mexican Jesus.
Yeah, and that's, I think, what kind of, maybe that was just me missing it. And because the opening, were that Border Patrol or was that just
I don't think they're Border Patrol. I think they have to be vigilante. And so that is a complaint that I still have with the show, is that so we finally get to see Salim now pursuing the djinn that he had sex with. Otherwise, it was just this random vignette episodes ago that you thought wouldn't matter. We still have gotten 2 scenes of the sex goddess, and she's never showed up. So that's one of my bigger issues, that they show these scenes and then they don't actually work it into the plot. This was the first one that I felt happened and then kind of had something to do, but they still don't quite explain it. I would assume that's not Border Patrol, because I don't think Border Patrol immediately just starts shooting people, right?
Well, then, but that's and maybe it was timed in a way to have that kind of, because that if we say vigilantism, then we're talking about basically the whole rest of the episode, that's kind of just a centered theme, because then you got this point where you've got the whole town banding together and running the law themselves. I guess the problem that I had with it just ends up being that kind of narrative that I guess it's hard to describe. It just ends up being like the god, like Vulcan doing the noose with Shadow. They keep going back to that, and maybe that's just kind of this, I don't know, new young white privilege kind of thing that we're figuring out in society in general. But at some point it goes, Jesus, we're actually on your side. Why do you guys got to keep shoving this right front and center? You know, is that wrong? I could totally be wrong by thinking that, but you know, it's just kind of hard to sit there and keep seeing it over and over and over again.
Sure.
And not sit there and go, dude, what else can I do? You know what I mean?
Yeah. Well, I think okay, so I'll address a few points there. I think it's okay to say I didn't enjoy it because I already know the narrative that we have, like, you know, and this is stereotypical, but it's also true. Like, I have family there that adheres to a lot of these stereotypes. You know, there's a portion of this country that is gun crazy and racist. Not always both, but there's plenty that are. There's also plenty of people that like guns that aren't racist. There's also, I'm sure, racists that don't care for guns, right? But I can see it being one of those things, like, we know that stereotype, especially you and I, because we're, surprise, you and I are on the left, right? We're fairly liberal, right? So we know that stereotype, and we know that stereotypes of liberals and conservatives don't do too much good, because it, like, puts up barriers and doesn't, you know, have you address it at the same time. A show that's talking about the things we fetishize as a nation, and like the belief is kind of what makes gods and gives them power. I still think it would be disingenuous to not have it. So whether it needs to be the bulk of an episode, I don't know, right? Because the way they address slavery so far has been one vignette in the opening, and the argument could be that they could have just had this be a small part. I think the other piece I really liked is the fact that Vulcan was played by Corbin Burnson, which, I don't know if you've ever seen the horror movies The Dentist and The Dentist 2.
I would vomit everywhere.
They are amazing, and they are very hard to watch because it's all dental gore. But he is the evil dentist, and he is just like phenomenal. Like, I just really like him as an actor. So it's one of those things, kind of like Chernabog, who's also kind of this almost like inbred South stereotype, but a very different stereotype, but still kind of fun to watch. You know what I mean? So, but you're right. I mean, it is very much this stereotype, but it is short-lived, and he is killed quickly So I don't know. I almost wonder if that kill is supposed to be therapeutic for the audience to say, like, as a society we're moving forward and being a little more reasonable. But who knows? Maybe that's wishful thinking.
Well, I mean, you're dead on with the stereotype thing, and I think what I focus on, and it's hard to put into words, other than to say that the new stereotype will become the not everybody, quote unquote, not all people, quote unquote, and it's slowly going to become that because pretty soon everyone's just going to be like, well, hey, I'm not this way, and that'll any progress that might have been made kind of gets diminished because it turns into now everyone's just going to start saying, hey, I'm not like that, so it's not real. You know what I mean? So that's kind of where maybe I'm just predicting self-defeationist, especially in time period right now where it's really important to keep this stuff front and center. I just don't want to keep... I'm tired of the boxing and categorizing into little groups when a show like this, especially had the complexity, there are a million shades of gray to this show. They're just, million shades of everywhere else. So that was the problem I kind of had.
Well, I think when you look at it though, isn't like any of these gods kind of the purest form of, right? Like, so you think of like Jesus and he's perfect without sin.
Right.
So the followers obviously never achieve that, right? Mm-hmm. And so you think of something like this, it is the purest form, which the purest form is the stereotype, right? The stereotype with no nuance is the perfect form of a god. Meanwhile, the followers and the people that kind of provide the blood sacrifice and whatnot, they're obviously going to have nuance and be people. So, I don't know, maybe the optimistic spin is that a bunch of people from varying walks of life will have similar conversations to you and I and learn a little bit more about each other, right? Mm-hmm. And then they'll hold hands and sing Kumbaya.
We'll all hug. You know what's been getting me, and I had... Shadow's really off-put me through the entire show. He kind of won a little bit with me over with Dead Wife Laura's episode because it felt natural. But
sure.
I can't really tell what the showrunners are doing with him and the showrunners are trying to get us to do with Wednesday's identity. I mean, sure we've had some spoilers on here, but is it not obvious who he is? Why? I mean, they spent like 5 minutes with Shadow saying, who are you really? And Wednesday literally is playing along going, oh, you wouldn't believe if I told you. It's like, I mean, are the showrunners thinking no one can tell who Wednesday is at this point? I mean, Jesus, they had his name filling up the entire screen for 45 seconds.
Yeah, no, I don't think it's that. I think it's more the fact that, you're supposed to feel for Shadow and the fact that how would you actually cope when confronted with this. So there is kind of I thought a good dialogue that brought to life what they're trying to convey was when they're walking down the road and he asked what the hell it was that. He's like, that's not the right question. And they talk a little bit about it. He's like, what do you want them to be? What were your thoughts? And like, they killed those cops. It's like, well, yeah, for I'm trying to remember the phrasing, but he said it was a sacrifice for them and a warning for me. And he eventually lands on gods. He's like, well, what is a god? What came first? Gods or the men who created the mind? And then later, he has to pull something out of Shadow, which we don't get a whole lot of context for other than it probably came from, the encounter last episode. But he says, you have a God-shaped hole in your head. But essentially everyone does, like, right? Even if you don't worship an actual religion, you fill it with the worship of, I don't know, your sports team or your like, I'm sure we'll get an episode where there's a god of sports, right? Because that's another American fetish, and I'm sure it'll also be stereotypical, and it'll be fine because that's kind of where we're at. I think what I in general liked more about the episode though is the fact that the last 3 episodes have been a story progressing forward, whereas the first 3 felt like, wait, where's the real story? Because so much time's being spent doing these coming to America stories. And once again, I think it comes down to, pacing and editing. But you're right, Shadow continues to be this character that doesn't have a lot to say. Like, you mentioned the novel, he's meant to kind of be this blank character. And I think when he talks, it's meant just to kind of give a few lines that you yourself might say if you were in this situation and didn't really know how to make heads or tails of it. Because I guess as an audience watching something supernatural and superhero-esque, like we've all seen that and we know what it's like. If it happened in real life, I honestly don't know if I would immediately just be like, oh, this is obviously what happens in the movies, or would I just be so divorced from the fact that that's possible, would I continue to deny it, continue to ask questions, and continue to try to like convince myself I'm just going crazy?
Maybe that's what they're trying to do with it, though, because at some point, I mean, if we boil down to it, we end up being, could we drop everything and suspend belief?
Yeah.
And if you sit there and you think, well, if something like crazy like that happened, could you sit there and instantly turn your head around and go, okay, everything else is not reality. I don't have that bill to pay. I don't have that, that time schedule to fill. Could you just drop it and go to that? And maybe that's what the whole point of this show is that it ends up being are you able to have a suspension of your belief to move on and drop everything and follow this new narrative? But I mean, that's a hard question.
Well, and I think too, and what's interesting, I had this thought like as you were talking, is if you believe in a religion, you immediately suspend disbelief, right? Because it doesn't mesh with anything you've ever seen, right? And I'm not going to get to a conversation of what religion's right or not, but my point is, if you believe in Jesus and miracles, or you believe in reincarnation, or any other religion out there, you're immediately suspending anything you've ever actually seen, because you've never seen a miracle, you've never seen proof of, you know what I mean? It is basically, that's why they call it faith. So you're able to suspend disbelief, and same thing with like the American dream, right? With any kind of concepts, like if you're super optimistic or super pessimistic, you're kind of suspending the reality, which is that there's a big heap of shit here and then a big heap of gold here. Like life gives you both, right?
Yeah.
But it's almost like we're really good at suspending disbelief in regard to concepts and ideals. But if one of them were to smack us in the face, then how the hell would we handle it, right? If you actually saw what you idealize made flesh, wouldn't you just freak the fuck out? And I wonder if I have a feeling that we have to be better as a society of coping with that now than ever, just because of what we've been able to see in technology and like just movies and stuff. Whereas, hell, you show an iPad to someone 200 years ago and they think you're a witch, right? So I think we're the best generation right now. If I did see an actual miracle happen, maybe I'd be able to cope with it. The other side of that coin is that I might just think it's some David Copperfield shit and never believe in it because I know how much you can do with magic, illusionists and technology and everything else.
Right. And I mean, it's funny because like we spent, you never notice that we don't do like UFO videos anymore.
Yeah.
And it's simply because the technology has gotten there. And we, like me and one of my buddies we had to spend a day that we should have been working. We started downloading all these UFO videos that were uploaded online and going frame by frame in our compositing software.
Oh, really?
To really kind of see. And sure enough, literally every single one we could see was like, wow, that's actually looks pretty shitty when you jump frame by frame. And it's one thing to go second by second, but when you're literally talking 30 frames in 1 second, when you jump through each one, you're starting to break things down even further.
Are you saying they're all fake and they're not just like?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, because I mean, a lot of people think they're real, but they're not aliens, right? A lot of people just think they're fucking government tests. Because how many things have we prototyped and not told people about? But you're saying like a lot of the ones you saw just totally weren't real; they were fake.
Yeah. Totally.
Gotcha.
Because you jump through and they end up seeing what's called rotoshaping or rotosplining, and it's a process of when you don't have a green screen, you have to go in frame by frame and essentially paint out the outline of an object, so that way you can. Compositing and visual effects is a bunch of mathematics where you cut things out of certain splices of film and then put them right on top to each other, and so you can see it if you know what you're looking for. But they were all just like that. But now we're back into kind of a worshiping media and content stuff because of people that, dug those things. Granted, they don't have as much power anymore, but people used to really hold on to that. And hell, we wouldn't have X-Files without it, right?
Hey,
I want to believe.
I don't know if it actually happened, but I read, and I'm going to look this up, so excuse the keyboard. I guess they were, this year was the year that I think Kennedy's assassination documents were supposed to be declassified, right? But then there's also supposed to be the year that the Area 51 stuff got declassified. Or maybe that's coming up soon. Of course, you type.
Can't they overwrite it?
So this is not something I can easily look up during a podcast. You type in Area 51 declassified, and it's just nothing but fucking alien sites. You don't find the CNN article about. But anyway, there's a lot of that stuff's supposed to be like redacted. So, you know what? I think we have talked about the bulk of the episode. So maybe we'll throw to Mike's segment. I may be taken, do an ad, and then we'll come back and we'll talk about the room.
Preacher don't preach.
And now, here's Mike.
Hello, and welcome to another episode of I May Be Mistaken. I'm your host, Mike. This week we're going to talk about the Jinn. He's made 3 separate appearances. Well, he's made 2 appearances, but we talked about him pretty heavily in this episode with Salim, not Salim. So let's go ahead and jump into it. The Jinn is of Islamic origins, and they're creations of God or Allah, which seems more appropriate given the Islamic traditions. And it's kind of the same as, like how humans were created, but where humans were molded out of clay, the Jinn were made first. They came before humans, and they were made from, and this is a quote from the Quran, the smokeless flame of fire, which is like a really cool way of saying it. What's interesting about the Jinn is that they actually have free will, and they can choose whether or not to be Muslims or not. So I guess that's similar to like our understanding of angels, fallen angels versus followers of God. The Jinn that choose not to be Muslim, they are actually associated, with the ultimate non-Muslim, and that's Satan, right? So they have this demonic personification, or I guess, they're identified that way. And in many ways, the Jinn are also similar to us, in that they live like normal lives. They eat, they drink, they party, they marry, all that good stuff. But they exist in what's essentially a parallel world, and we can't see them. But they are able to manipulate our world, whether it's through, they can possess bodies, they can take on basically any physical form, whether it's anything from human to zoological, and basically everything in between, inanimate objects, so on and so forth. What they're best known for, though, is as fortune tellers. And it's really interesting how they go about doing it, because they basically will go to heaven, and they'll eavesdrop on what the angels are talking about, and they'll bring that information back and pass it on to people in our world, by way of what we would consider, mediums, but is referred to as sorcerers or magicians, in more ancient, mythologies and storytellings about the Jinn. But one of the powers they are not credited with is the ability to grant wishes, as we all know. The Jinn in the episode with Salim specifically said, "I don't grant wishes." He was a little pissed off about the characterization too, which is funny. But yeah, and it's probably something from that ability to be fortune tellers that we've tied into our modern ideas about the Jinn, and how we equate them with genies and the Aladdin and all that good stuff. And I'm sure some of that storytelling, Arabian Nights, has probably led strongly to that personification as them as wish granters. But that's it for me this week. I hope you enjoyed it. I look forward to talking to you next week, and enjoy the rest of the show. Peace.
Preacher don't preach.
Hey little buddies, this episode of Boob Tube Buddies is brought to you by Audible. Simply go to audibletrial.com/Boob Tube Buddies to try Audible free for 30 days. With exactly one title more than you could reasonably shake a stick at, Audible has something for everyone. Titles such as The Art of the Deal by Donald J. Trump, similar to other classic art of titles such as The Art of War by Sun Tzu and Art of Seduction by Robert Greene. The Art of the Deal teaches you how to get what you want out of life, but in this case, by using shady, underhanded business tactics. So whether the art you pursue is meant to be monetary, moist, or militant, Audible has you covered. And we are back. Once again, a huge thank to Mike, who we love. He does fantastic segments, and I never actually hear them before, like while recording. Like we always get them a little bit after. So I don't know what God he dove into, but we've enjoyed every single one so far, and he continues to just be a fount of knowledge. Check him out on Sense8, which they are doing the second season. And I know the show got canceled. They still are just fantastic on it. And I think that's the only thing he's currently doing. But, you know, he does some movies with us. I think Mike and I might even do Wonder Woman soon because the Bettys are just not going to get to it. So I think we're going to do a man-only podcast.
People have been quite upset about Sense8 being canceled. I've seen a lot of people be really upset. Like I know it's like I went and had dinner with my parents. And even they, who tend not to watch news shows, were really getting into it and really upset that it had gotten canceled. So I'm curious, because you don't hear too much from this with Netflix. Netflix usually, if they've got the viewership, they're going to keep doing it. But
yeah, but Netflix has taken like a giant... I mean, Netflix, was it 2 years ago, where they said their goal is to have 50% of all their programming on the network be original content, and they're getting pretty close at this point. So... I mean, they obviously weren't going to keep everything indefinitely. If you're putting that much money into all these shows, some shit's gonna like not get the views that other ones do, just like a normal network, and they're gonna have to say no. I don't know what the views are, so I'm not necessarily defending the decision, but like the moment they went to where most of their money was going not into licensing agreements for already made content, but creating their own original content, I knew things were eventually gonna, get the hammer at some point. So
they've got their model is so brilliant because they're like a TV network, but they have direct access to viewership. Yeah. They know exactly who's watching it, where they're watching it, what time they're watching it. It's not being filtered through independent organizations based on, television.
But what they don't have
averages and statistics.
But what they don't have that the networks normally have is ad revenue, right? So now, you know what I mean? So literally all they have to do to base stuff on is how many views does it get. And I'm sure they also have some cool numbers to show, oh, this person signed up for Netflix for the first time and immediately watched these 4 Netflix series. And they can probably tell, like, okay, it's crazy how many subscribers are starting our service to get these shows. Or it's amazing how many people cancel and then a year later turn it on for a month just to stream House of Cards. So I'm sure they have a lot of stuff. It's just a different model to assess everything from. But anyway.
And I'm sure it's complex, but they get probably the return on investment mathematics and statistics way better than I think anyone else. So I think if they do end up canceling a show like Sense8, there's probably a damn good reason for it.
Yeah, they should start a Kickstarter to fund the 3rd season, and then fans can fund it if they really want it. Right?
We'll give the Square Enix response.
Yeah.
If you like it,
I love
you
how
should
most
watch
episodes,
it and buy it more.
I love how most episodes we just somehow end up talking about Netflix. Like their strategy, their business model. Why don't they have special features? Anyway, so half the episode was the journey of Wednesday in Shadow, and actual progress was made. Weapons were forged. They're talking about war. There's actually some forward momentum to the series for these last 3 episodes. And then we have the other plot, which you seem to love.
Yeah, I dug the... Whoops.
Are you backing up a truck?
No, it's my Apple Watch.
Oh, nice.
I liked that. This was the one aspect of the episode that I actually thought worked well, the road trip thing. And this is where you start to see some kind of complexity. I like when we dip into Laura a lot because she pulls it off very well. I don't think her performance was as strong this episode. And some parts of it just don't quite make any sense. Like she wanted to go to the bar and she was the reason they pulled over. And so this whole kind of thing with her smoking and keep drinking when she's not getting anything from it, she said it before, I don't quite get. But the complexities that she has figuring out what to do with her family and why she still has longing to it, but then turning around and kind of her connections with Salim, I think ended up being super powerful. So here's somebody who doesn't believe in anything, yet for some reason she's seeing Salim and kind of liking what she's seeing and the peace that he has and the path that he is on. The other thing I dug too is you pick up on the leprechaun maybe falling for her a little bit.
Maybe. I mean, I think he likes that she's fiery. I will say, in terms of, like, she knows she doesn't get anything from the smoking and the drinking. At the same time, what I kind of chalked it up to is, you know, you ever heard of a phantom limb?
Mm-mm.
Phantom limb is like if you lose an appendage, you
yeah,
feel
yeah.
pain as if it's still there, even though everything's healed. You have a sensation like the hand's still there, and you know, eventually it subsides. But I mean, even decades later, people apparently still have instances where it feels like that. So I mean, I guess you would have the same thing with if you were resurrected as dead and didn't need sustenance, you still would have this phantom hunger as if you did need, you know. So I imagine it'll get better with time. But it's kind of like, you've ever seen, there's a few vampire movies that when they first get turned, they feel like they want that stuff, and some movies have them just vomit and not react to it. Other movies have them have no reaction to it, and then, you know, once they've been around for 100 years, now it's just blood because, you know, there's just not the appeal. It was kind of like this phantom pang prior. But you're right, she does connect with Salim. There's some funny innuendo because the last time we saw him, he had a cartoon boner and was getting ass fucked by a god, which was very transcendental, which is why it went to like that weird, you know, kind of cartoon look. But I love how there's a lot of innuendo because he mentions like he didn't have purpose, and then the way he says it isn't really overtly sexual, yet the leprechaun immediately picks up on it, and then they both, and maybe I was reading too much into it, but then they say fucking assholes like 4 times in a row. Which
So
I just thought was
Genie
funny.
in your bottle.
Yeah, Genie in your bottle was the joke, yeah. Anyway.
Well, there was a lot of references. It was all like, I didn't have purpose, but he injected his purpose into me. I mean, it was a lot of really just like tongue in cheek where, you know, they sat there and did like this super monumental thing of having a gay sex scene on TV, but then sit there and immediately turn around and do a whole bunch of, you know, middle schooler boy jokes. But I think that's kind of what the leprechaun does.
And, well, that's kind of the appeal of Gaiman, though. Like Gaiman, Alan Moore, like a lot of these, you know, especially British writers, they do a lot of tongue-in-cheek humor while at the same time being very well-read, well-written, and profound. But they don't... and I saw some... It was kind of a dumb video, but it was funny because I enjoy a good pun. I know a lot of people cringe at them. But it was just a video of the history of the pun, and it basically just talked about, like, this is a tradition that started with Shakespeare. And it gave examples that I can't remember. But a play on words... whether it's, you know, a pun that you might think is lowbrow, or, you know, the genie put his bottle in you. It's something even a good old Bill Shakespeare did back in the day when he, you know, invented 20,000 words.
One of my favorite memes is the pun dog. So I could do puns all day long.
Is it Pun Dog Millionaire?
It's the husky. Oh, you're gonna.
I don't know. I don't know. I was just making a pun on Slumdog Millionaire. Pun Dog Millionaire.
No, type pun dog.
Okay, I'm gonna do that right now. This is the episode where this episode is brought to you by Google. We've been searched it a few times. Oh, I've seen Pun Dog. He's cute.
Yeah,
He's
he's awesome.
Dog. Yeah, he's a good dog.
Or pun Walking Dead. The Walking Dead pun.
Oh, God,
Coral.
Oh yeah, coral, just like the coral reef. Yeah, that one's good. Oh man, it's so sad to know that coral is slowly dying at an unprecedented rate, and we probably won't have them in a few seasons.
Oh,
See what I did there?
I haven't watched it.
No.
Yeah.
See what I did there? I was talking about the coral reef.
It's dead already, dude. It's dead.
It's not completely dead. I mean, there's still reef. I mean, it's a concern in Australia, but I just made a really good pun about Walking Dead and the coral reef and climate change, and I'm really proud of myself. I'm riding this high. Anyway, where were they trying to go? Just they were trying to find. She's just trying to find Shadow again. Basically, is that their mission, or they're trying to find the Jinn? I feel like everyone wants to go a different direction.
I can't tell what her plan is.
She moves the steering wheel. Like they're going one place, or at least Leprechaun thinks so, and they go to a different road.
The funny thing is that, you know, Shadow's her lost puppy, but she's become the lost puppy. She's the one, he's kicked her to the curb, and she is following him. And she did have a moment where she's like, my heart beat when I kissed him.
Yeah, it's true.
And then she sits there, and the leprechaun kind of sits there and goes, well, was it real? And then she suddenly started doubting it too. So, but I do think a lot of it ends up just being one of two things is happening. Either leprechaun's falling for her, or he's worshiping her because she's become the embodiment of his coin. Which, now that I say it out loud, I think that's more what's going on.
Well, yeah, and he's basically trying to get her to someone that can resurrect life without the need of his coin, so he can get his fucking coin back. At the same time, if they kissed and her heart beat, like, maybe they just need to bang one time and she'll be alive.
So you can inject life into her.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, that's the
Put
theme
his
here.
purpose in her.
He's a divine turkey baster. God.
We are finding philosophical depth to this show that borders on the middle school level.
I love how the first one was about like middle America and like, putting up walls and politics and how just to talk to each other and like, how people cope with religion. And it was just deep. And then this side of the after the ad, it's just all boning and sex and puns.
It's all very road trippy. That's what it is.
Yeah,
it gets boiled down to road trip.
Yeah, we like to keep it for any possible audience. There's something that'll appeal to them. They just won't like the whole episode ever. Anyway, is there anything else of note? I'm trying to think. I love the alligator bar, which I think we saw before, but I don't know. I think you got to spend a little more time in the atmosphere because there's not a fight scene that detracts from it. But it felt like, we're in Orlando. For those listeners that don't know, it felt like if Gatorland had a watering hole.
I like too that she orders vodka and as close to rubbing alcohol as possible.
What
so
time?
She
Yeah.
disinfect and preserve whatever rotting flesh she has.
Oh, I didn't even think about that. Yeah, that's a good idea. Yeah, that's funny. All right. I have nothing else.
I got nothing else either.
My God, the well has run dry.
Yes, after
Which these normally take us 30 minutes. We had a lot to say, so I feel like I'm like, God, shouldn't we have more? But I think we're gonna be at like 50 minutes. So hey, listeners,
we got our hashtag boner in. That's what it is. Every episode we get a hashtag boner.
Yeah. Hey, listeners, we love you. Thanks for listening. Thanks for making it to the end. Share out on social media. Let the people know we're doing this for free, but we love doing it and we want to keep doing it. Otherwise, I guess you want to tie a bow on this bitch?
Tie a bow. We'll see you next time, little buddies.
Woo woo.
2 in a row.
Oh my God, you're on a win streak.
Cannot hold me down.
Yeah.